Did you know that technically the Alliance is sort of leaderless right now? I mean, Anduin is fully back in Stormwind, he has officially returned to the city, but he refuses to take the throne still. I mean, the actual leader Turalyon that was ruling for years, he stepped down, he's currently leading the light army that is getting increasingly evil in Midnight, and Genn Greymane has actually taken reins over Stormwind while all of this is happening. Both Turalyon and Anduin are in the light army, faction conflict is increasing and it is about to escalate. So what is going on with the Alliance leadership? Is the king actually going to return? And when are we finally going to be done with these regents and intermediaries? And how will Alliance leadership look like in Midnight? Warhammer, Red Dead Redemption, WoW Game Time, Destiny, you can get all of this at amazing prices with my link in the description below. You also got mobile top-ups, software, a bunch more with the best prices on the market. Better yet, if you use my code DORON, you will get another discount on top, so click the link in the description and get the best deals ever at Gamivo. So what is really interesting is that Anduin has literally been one of the shortest lived rulers of the Alliance, despite the fact that he has been around the throne since the start of the Classic. I mean, we can't really count his rule during Variant's absence, as Bolvar 4 Dragon was an actual ruler. I mean, Anduin was literally a toddler. Then when Variant sacrificed himself at the start of Legion with the Broken Shore, Anduin became a king of the Alliance at a very young age. However, he literally only ruled for a few short years throughout Legion and BFA, which I gotta say were some of the most turbulent and hardest times for the Alliance, but he was abducted right at the beginning of Shadowlands and Turalyon became a leader in his stead. Since then, throughout the Dragonfight and the War Within and the Fiery Timeskip in between, Turalyon has been leading the Alliance technically longer than Anduin himself. Anduin was in the meantime missing for a few years, then returned to Azeroth and he had his time to regroup his thoughts and return to his normal self, and in the War Within, I mean, he had a prominent role as one of the main characters. However, now leading into Midnight, we have some really interesting changes for the Alliance leadership. So Anduin, we know, has actually returned to Stormwind, he is fully back, but he decided to refuse the throne for his own current reasons, and the actual ruler of the Alliance is actually Genn Greymane, unbeknownst to many. Most of this happened in the prequel to Midnight. From the Midnight beta content and the prequel book Blood Ties, we've learned what was really going on, and technically Turalyon was actually not happy with his position and he didn't like ruling at all. He only really accepted it as he is bound to duty as a paladin, and what we've learned is that while he is an excellent battlefield commander and a leader of troops with a lot of experience, he is not actually a good faction leader. We learned he's far too rigid to adapt to the fluid nature of politics. We've learned that he created quite a few enemies amongst the Alliance. He wrapped quite a lot of people the wrong way, the common folk as well as nobles of the Alliance, and no one really saw him as too competent at his role. Since then though, the Midnight invasion happened and Turalyon had to lead the new light army as their leader, combining the priests and the paladins all throughout Azeroth as well as the actual light army, and he abandoned his post as the leader of the Alliance. In his stead, Anduin actually returned to Stormwind, but turns out Anduin as a priest, or even a paladin at this point, also went to the front line, which left Genn Greymane as the current leader in Stormwind, actually dealing with the ruling and the leading of the faction. Now here's the thing, you might not think much of this, but Alliance leadership is really uncertain at the moment, and we know for a fact a new faction war is in fact brewing. I mean, I've talked about this a bunch of times. It's not going to be a war akin to BFA, but faction tensions are rising. Blizzard promised it will develop further and further as the saga continues. This has been hinted at for nearly 2 years now, with constant bits of interviews about how we can expect the factions to start hostilities and be around the state of Classic, and how faction peace is never going to actually work. At Midnight, it first started with Turalyon's leadership that completely mistreated the Blood Elves and Lortimar as the leader of Quaterlas. We've seen the new Light Army essentially occupy Silvermoon and their military authority. I mean, they literally started outright just arresting people they don't like. They started stealing Blood Elven property and really causing some serious friction in Silvermoon. Then in Voidstorm, through Void manipulation, we've seen the Horde and the Alliance get into actual open battles for the first time since BFA. I mean, the Void Dominator found fanatical members of both factions that never liked the truce and the peace, and they just fed into their story, causing them to start just outright attacking each other. Anduin previously was one of the lead characters keeping this piece, but at the moment we got both him and Turalyon in this light army that is getting increasingly more hostile and villainized, and we've got Genn Greymane as the leader of Stormwind at the moment. Genn, who was always one of the Allaince characters that was leaning more towards conflict as opposed to faction peace. So far things are really uncertain. As you may know, one of the most popular speculations for like the past 5 or even 10 years was that Turalyon was going to go evil and that he's going to bring in the light army to conquer Azeroth. There was always that storyline, whether he's truly loyal to the Alliance in Azeroth or whether he's loyal to the light army and the Naru, as after all, he fought for both, but he spent a lot longer leading the cosmological army of the light, and as you may know, he is actually their main commander. Well, half of that speculation literally happened already in Midnight. He really did bring the light army. They really are sort of acting as conquerors. The thing is though, at the moment, the story writing is sort of all over the place, so it's hard to pinpoint where exactly it is going to go. It's no secret that they're starting to write Turalyon as more and more of a villain, but then they kind of tone it down a bit and then they bring the villain back again. I mean, he's starting out by not caring that much about civilians in Midnight, having quite a bit of disagreement with his own son Arator, having problems with the elves, and somehow as the light goes crazier, I don't feel like Turalyon is going to get any better. I mean, even before Midnight was announced, we've learned that the light is going to go evil in a way, and that we will see the fanatical side of the light in this expansion. We're already seeing that right out of the gate, and it is only the start of the expansion. What is interesting about this though is how this will impact the Alliance as a faction. As I said, Turalyon, technically the current leader, is also the leader of the light army, and Anduin, the rightful king of Stormwind, is in this light army as well, while Genn rules in their stead. Now check this out, the Gilnesk has actually been finally restored and is now officially a part of the Alliance. We know that in Midnight the interest areas are going to expand outside of just Qualtalas with the Forsaken as well, and the Blood Elves are getting increasingly more distance from the Alliance characters with the light army. Could Genn sees the opportunity to try to attack as the current leader of the faction? We know he has a serious dislike for the Forsaken, despite the fact that he restored his kingdom recently with their assistance. Personally, I don't think Genn is really going to go rogue, as Anduin is technically king. I mean, he is back on Azeroth. This would have made more sense when Anduin was actually gone. He was outside of the planet. Now he is around, just not actually leading. However, how is Anduin going to be impacted as well is a good question. If both Turalyon and Genn go towards the side of the faction conflict, I do feel like if Turalyon does go more and more evil as the light army leader, Anduin is finally going to return as king and take control over the Alliance. Both factions are at a really weird stage though. As I said, Alliance leadership has like 3 leaders at the same time, and the Horde has no war chief, and instead it is ruled by this council, which has like 15 different rulers representing everyone and their mother in the Horde. I think as faction conflict emerges, the need for strong leadership for both factions is going to become more and more prominent. I think that Anduin will finally have to take responsibility and rule as king, and I also think the Horde finally might get a war chief, and this council might just return back to the position of an advisor. Thanks for watching. Check out my video on the new planet Blizzard just added called the Nasha War by clicking on the screen. And check out my video on real world history, the Titans and Greek mythology that I've recorded live in Italy by clicking on the screen as well. See you next time!